Our first movie is The Hunt for Red October, and this is a slick, intelligent, well-constructed movie version of the best-selling novel by Tom Clancy. Set in the Cold War year of 1984, it tells the story of a renegade Soviet submarine skipper, played by Sean Connery, who devises a scheme to defect to the United States and bring the latest Soviet submarine right along with him. Connery's plot begins when he murders the Communist Party political official who is on board as part of a system of checks and balances.
I want you and the doctor to witness this. I'm removing the political officer's missile key. Carry on. And I'm keeping it myself.
Captain, I think we should report this to Red Fleet Command.
I'm afraid that's impossible, Doctor. Our orders are for strict radio silence. Orders, sir.
That's all long enough.
Yes, sir. This is most unnerving, Captain. The reason for having two missile keys is so that no one man may
what?
May arm the missiles.
Meanwhile, an American intelligence expert played by Alec Baldwin is convinced that Connery is trying to defect with the submarine. Here he meets with James Earl Jones, a Navy admiral, to explain his theory.
Good afternoon, Admiral.
Afternoon, Matthew.
Where are we going anyway?
Briefing for Jeffrey Pelt, President's National Security Advisor. Most of the Joint Chiefs will be there, along with a few other people.
Who's giving the briefing?
You are.
Beneath the sea in the submarine Red October, Connery justifies his plan to the men he trusts.
You had to make a political statement. Or was it something deeper, Captain? Something that made you unable to simply slip away? Was it ego, Captain?
We each have our reasons, Victor. My own began the day I was handed the blueprints for this ship. A ship which had but one use.
Desperate to prove his point, Baldwin, the American intelligence man, has himself flown to a rendezvous with an American sub that's near the Red October.
Okay, out you go.
And then he tries to convince the American sub skipper, played by Scott Glenn, not to attack Red October.
The Russians will stop at nothing to prevent Ramius from defecting. They are desperate. They've invented this story that he's crazy because they need our help to sink him before he can safely contact us.
Weapons control, I want full safeties. We're so close. I want this fish coming back at us. Full safety, aye, sir.
Captain, I know this man.
In movies like this, where you have a lot of different cast members, a little typecasting helps out a lot. And the performances of Connery, Baldwin, and Glenn provide a strong center to the film. What's also a little surprising is how easy the plot is to follow. If you've read Tom Clancy's book, as I have, you may remember what a complex plot it had. In the movie, everything is clear as crystal, and that helps the suspense a lot. There's one strange contradiction about the movie, though. They've done a great job of reproducing the insides of submarines in this movie. They look absolutely authentic, to me anyway, having never been in a submarine. But the underwater shots of the outsides of the subs are sort of murky and disappointing. I don't know, maybe nuclear submarines just plain look like big, bloated, gray whales, and there's nothing you can do to make them look any sexier.
Have you been on the outside of a submarine?
Actually, down at the Museum of Science and Industry, but that was a German U-2 boat from World War II, so I'm not exactly up to date.
I think they probably got both parts right. I think that the insides of the submarine, all that stuff, this is a good how-to movie. I think we learn how people operate on a submarine. At the same time, I think that what's interesting is we also learn how the intelligence community works. Particularly in the United States, there's a great political meeting with all the admirals, the Joint Chiefs, and a political operative for the president, and it's very well done. And we think we're on the inside, which is the appeal, I understand, of Clancy's books. The other thing that I think is really distinctive about the film is the performance by Alec Baldwin. This is sort of a star-making role. He is not a superhero. He doesn't play it that way. He plays it as a guy who's simply very, very smart and careful and methodical, and he isn't boring while doing that. And I thought that was really the strength of the film.
It was good casting, and it was interesting for that particular role that it was a relatively new face. We've seen him before, but a lot of people don't know who he is.
Yes, in other words, if it were a familiar face, for example, if you put Connery in that role, you'd say, well, there's not going to be any problem here, because he'll obviously solve what needs to be solved.
So it has this in common with the book. It's a smart thriller. In other words, it congratulates you for being smart enough to be able to figure out all the stuff that's going on here, and it's fun on that level.
A lot of extra information.